As usual, I will start the ball rolling because you guys will take some time to warm up. As mentioned by Chang Hui, you can pass your question to him in the form of paper, or you can raise your hand and there will be ladies with mic to hand over to you. Okay, I'll ask the first question to Alfred because just now he say they have done some extensive research of the global market and on where you should put your money in. So I think in the minds of many audience here, what would be some of the interesting market that would benefit from the current orgy of QE that is done by the countries that he has mentioned?
Okay, I mean, unfortunately, if you talk about properties, we do see there's a very strong headwinds for investment in the near future. So now it's a buyer's market, meaning to say, if you're buying for your own use over a long period of time, I think this is the fantastic time. But if you're looking to make good investments, you have to have a much longer time horizon. Because QE policies, now it's not only US, it's Japan, Europe, and China. Can you imagine all this liquidity that comes? Very likely, where does all this liquidity will go to? Especially when cooling measures are being put up in Singapore, in Hong Kong, some form in Malaysia, they will go into market that has no barriers, no cooling measures, equities. Then among the equities, then where would be the most likely place? Yeah, I mean, of course, our house view is that we like China because there's a very strong crux about it. But of course, today it's not the segment. So I mean, just my take for the investors here.
Okay, and my second question is for Patrick. I think just now, in the interest of time, Patrick could not share with us about the lasting power of attorney. So maybe Patrick can use this opportunity to share with the audience more about this LPA. Yeah.
Okay, LPA is a document or legal document introduced by the government a few years ago that allows you to appoint a donee, this person called donee, to manage your affairs, take care of your needs, and also manage your properties and assets for your benefit in the event that you lose your mental faculty and the ability to look after yourself. So for a will, right, it will basically take effect after you pass on, but sometimes we don't go that quickly. You know, we suffer from some dementia or Alzheimer's, so on and so forth, and we can't take care of ourselves. So your family, in order to take care of you, right, got to dip into your bank account, your savings, or even sell your property. But they can't do that if the property is in your own name, you see. So they can't sign for you. So then they are stuck. So they have to use their own money. So that actually caused quite a lot of problems. So the government actually introduced this form for you to sign, fill up and then register with the Office of Public Guardian, so that in the event that you lose your mental faculty and you can't take care of yourself, your donee can actually step forward and actually take care of you, put you in a nursing home, look after you, give you the kind of medical treatment that you need, including taking your money and basically look after you. Yep, that's what the LPA does. It's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. My next question is directed at Chi Ming. Yeah. So I think the audience will be very keen to know in Malaysia what is the outlook of the prices for the key markets like Johor Bahru, KL, and also Penang in the year 2015, and also the different segments like the residential, condo, landed, and also the commercial, industrial in each of these markets. What would be your view on the price level of these few key markets?
Now, in my presentation earlier on, I showed that from 2010, prices have gone up by double digits, But third quarter of 2013, this has slowed down somewhat. And is it good? If you ask me, I think it is a good thing long term for the property market, because prices cannot be forever galloping like a horse, because one day a bubble will be created, and when the bubble bursts, that will be very bad for the whole country. So I think if let's say the property prices can go up between 5 to 10% per year, that's a pretty good result because it beats inflation. it is better than putting your money in the FD. So if you can get that sort of capital appreciation, it is good. Now, if you look forward to 2015, second quarter of this year, we had price increase of about 6.6%. So generally, I would think that going forward 2015, I would speculate that it probably will be in range of about 5 to 8% increase overall for residential market. Now, commercial market is a little bit different. It would depend on the localized potential of that area. You can't generalize too much because in KL, I've seen with my own eyes, large townships, sell is easy. The developer has sold all the shop houses. But when it is completed, you find that the shop houses are empty. They can't rent out because that area may not have the population base yet. So if you don't have the population base, the retailers are reluctant to go in. So you actually really have to look at the specific location to see how big it is, the market catchment and so on, because that will have impact on whether you can rent out easily and what sort of use, and ultimately what sort of capital appreciation. Industrial, I am not very familiar because I don't really handle industrial. But currently, industrial is a segment which is moving in Malaysia. But it is not a game for property investors. Previously, some developers have come up with products like terrace factories, semi-detached factories, where this is more like shop houses, but with industrial use. Those have not turned up to be very good investments, and I think the developers have slowed down on those type of products. But factories and so on, we have had clients looking for expansion and so on. So in that sense, industrial is doing quite okay. Now look at the different market segments. I think the key market segments, of course, will be Klang Valley, which actually comprises KL and Greater KL. Johor, the level of interest is basically confined to Iskandar, not the other outlying areas. Penang, basically on the island. Yeah, Penang, you have got mainland and island, but the main interest is on the island. Now, basing on the chart, you can see that the prices in these three areas are still increasing. It's still going up. But at the same time, you look at the demand for properties in these areas. Iskandar seems to be driven a lot by foreign interest compared to KL, Penang, and so on. And the current situation is that there's concern of an oversupply in Iskandar. Yeah. So when people invest in Iskandar, they have to be very careful about which particular project, what are the attributes, which developer, and so on. Iskandar is no longer a short-term play, but I think if you look at it as a long-term investment, I think it is still a doable investment because of the government pushing Iskandar, Malaysia, to be a vibrant economic zone. So it cannot allow it to fail. So they will definitely be putting more infrastructure, putting in more investments to make Iskandar, Malaysia a thriving place. But for the time being, because of the huge inflow of supply, there's always this concern that prices could be affected. Occupancy rates, when those houses are completed, will be like Dubai a few years ago. A lot of completed buildings or half-completed buildings, and what they call nobody occupying it. We see the same thing, same situation to a certain extent in KL, like around the KLCC area. At night when you drive, there are quite a number of condominiums where you don't see much lights because a lot of those are bought by investors who at the end of the day, they can't rent out, and because they are not from Malaysia, they don't occupy it. But having said that, some of those projects that have been launched, which are branded together with some of those well-known hotel chains and so on, they seem to have done well. Although I think the last one or two projects, the sales take-up rate is slow. So sometimes it's how the developer has differentiated the product. there may be an oversupply, but if the developer manages to differentiate the product and position it as something different, it could still command quite good interest. Thank you.
The next question is for Christina. It's about en bloc. So I will try to combine or summarize these questions. Basically, some of the audience would want to know what is the en bloc potential for old apartments in Balestier, for example, AVA Towers condo. And the other related question is what is the en bloc potential for some of these old commercial strata title buildings in the town area like Peninsula Shopping Centre. And I think you just mentioned you guys successfully en bloc the industrial building. So in the light of the traditional en bloc play like the old apartments that Singaporeans are so used to, and the recent deals that you have done, industrial or commercial, so where should investor focus their attention on?
Okay, going by the first question, which is the en bloc potential of AVA Towers in Balestier, I'd just like to say that in a lot of the older strata titled residential buildings, there is always a good opportunity for en bloc. But when that will happen, we do not really know. In the first place, most of the owners inside, or at least a majority of 80% by share values, should really be motivated before an en bloc can actually take place. And you need to have a core group of very, very dedicated people to start your collective sale moving. As I've already said, the first thing that you should do is really to do some research, get a poll going, find out what people's expectations are, and then you can decide how you want to move ahead. So in terms of Balestier Towers, I think the first thing that you will need to do is find out if you have an increased plot ratio to tap on, so that you can actually make an extraordinary profit out of an ordinary residential building. If you do have an increased plot ratio, like for example, currently you might have a plot ratio of just 1.4, but in the master plan and in the new master plan you have a plot ratio of maybe 2.8 or something, then I would say go for it, you know, because you would have a lot of fat in your property. The second one about the collective sale of some commercial buildings, for example, Peninsula Plaza. Yes, I know Peninsula Plaza does have strata titled offices, but you must also find out, again, I said, go and do your research and your poll and see if people there are willing to come together to do a collective sale. Now, the problem is that I believe Peninsula Plaza does have a lot of owner-occupied units. And as an owner-occupier, I would be looking at a replacement unit. And we know today that office space have really hit the peak. We have never seen such benchmarks set in the office space market as of, since many years ago. So today we have already hit the peak for office space. So if an owner-occupier were to look at what his alternatives are, you know, it is unlikely that they will sign, because, you know, it's going to be a, they're not going to make a lot of money. In fact, they may even be out of pocket buying a new office space. So again, a lot of dynamics really have to be looked at before you embark on things like that. And I think if you have a group of dedicated people who are willing to do that for you, you know, I'll just say you do your study and then you embark on whatever you need to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is directed at Patrick. Actually, I think I have received up to 100 questions already. What are the advantages and disadvantages of a multi-generation trust versus a will? That means what should asset owner consider, whether to do a multi-generation trust or will? And related to that is, what is the cost of creating a multi-generation trust and any ongoing costs involved?
Okay, this one is going to take another 3 hours. Okay, actually, will is a form of trust. It's what we call dead man trust or testamentary trust. Trust got many types. So will is one form of trust that will take place after you pass on. But if you are talking about, okay, the difference between multi-generational trust and the will, like I said, a will basically take effect after you pass away. So basically whatever you want to give for your property, right, you only give after you pass away. One key advantage is you save stamp duty. Right now, if you transfer as a present, you want to give to your girlfriend one condo, or you want to sell, or you want to put it in trust, you attract stamp duty. Sometimes ABSD, depending on who is benefiting from that present. So contrary to what you may think, you can actually give your condo to somebody without selling it. There are people doing it. So if you do that, IRAS will basically tax you. But however, if your condo were to be given away by way of your will, no stamp duty. Alright, so you save on a huge 3% at least to the beneficiary. Alright, so that is one key difference between a will and a trust, because multi-generation trust, for some of my clients who decide to do that, right, they actually do the trust right now. That means they want the trust to take effect immediately after they execute the trust. That means basically when they do that, they actually put the property, the real estate, into a trust. That means the legal ownership of the property is being held by the trustee. It could be me, or it could be a licensed trust company, who will then hold the real estate for the benefit of the beneficiary, which again could be the actual owner or the family members of the children. But doing that, you have to pay stamp duty and sometimes ABSD. So that is one key difference between doing it by way of the trust, multi-generational trust, or a will. So now, which one to do it, right? Basically depends on your consideration. People want to do a multi-generation trust right now and transfer property, cash, wines, painting, race horses, all these things into a trust. Not just property, you can put in a trust. There are a few reasons generally. One is for asset protection. Because once you put it into a trust, the legal ownership changes hands. So legally it's not yours, ma. So if outside you owe people money, creditor come, right? You may enjoy some form of creditor protection if the trust is created 5 years beforehand. So the trust that you have created must cross a 5-year mark, then it may enjoy creditor's protection. So people do trust to protect their real estate, to protect their money. But by the way, if your real estate is currently under mortgage, the bank will not agree to your trust. So if you want to put real estate in a trust, it must be fully paid. Okay, number two, second reason why they may want to consider a trust is because they don't want family members to squabble right now. Can you imagine like children say, hey dad, can you sell the property now? No, give some to me, I'll do business, give some to sister, Before you die, they're already asking you to sell. So to prevent situation like this, they put the property into a trust, say now you don't need to bother me. Because now the property is owned by not me, owned by a trust company, you get to stay for your life, and the grandchildren also can stay there, but nobody can sell. So this is to avoid family squabble. Okay, there are many other reasons, some for tax reason, they want to put it in a trust, some want to preserve the real estate. Because if you don't, your real estate may be sold. If you give it to your children, if you worry that, oh, what if I die, then okay, sounds good, I can save on stamp duty, right? My property transfer by way of a will. But then again, if I give it to my son, then my daughter-in-law, how I don't like her, she may actually influence my son and then sell my condo, then problem, Although I'm dead, but I will not rest in peace. So I have this kind of concern. I don't want that to happen. So can I prevent that? No, I like my son, but I don't like my daughter-in-law. This kind of situation, right? So then they may want to consider trust, putting the real estate in the trust when they're still alive so they can see it. And they tell the trustee, you let my son and my daughter-in-law stay for the rest of their life, but don't let them touch. Don't let them do anything. So this is to preserve their asset, so that their asset will not be sold. So it all depends on the needs and requirement of the person, actually. I hope I've given you a brief overview of what trust is.
Alfred wants to add on, is it?
I'd like to add on because, especially for me, my age now, I'm actually quite fascinated with all this kind of stuff. I just heard recently there's this thing called sea burial. But we're not discussing about the different type of burial. So actually burials got things to understand. To add on what Patrick says, because we also help clients to do estate planning, so we work with law firms like Fortis Law. Imagine if someone passed on. Actually, there's a lot of things you can use with trust. After the person passed on, right, you give $1 million to your son. So he probably very grateful for that moment of time. But next year he forget you already. So how about arranging in such a way, 1 million you spread over 10 years. Then every year I give you 100,000. But how you collect, you must come to the cemetery or wherever you go. So you buy, then 100,000. So at least you can ensure 10 years of respect. I mean, that's why there's a lot of so many interesting things we can actually work with trust or wills. The other things that actually very popular now is if you have special need children. I mean, if you pass on, then who is going to take care of the special need child? So you can actually do combinations. We call it a 3-in-1, a will, a testamentary trust, and an LPA. Okay, that means to say you buy a property, you take on loans, you take on the mortgage insurance. So if let's say this person pass on, then the loan will be paid off by the insurance. Then this property can be transferred into a trust. And then you can instruct the trustee, because the property is fully paid off, right? The rental that you collect can be used to give as an allowance to the beneficiary. Then until the special need child pass on, then you can donate to charity. And special need child got different kind of definition, no? Autism, handicap, or just normal person but just cannot manage money. So different kind of application.
Okay, good. Alfred, you can hold on to the mic. The next question is for you. Besides the impending rise in interest rate, another major factor that could impact the local property market is the increased supply in completed units of residential in 2015 and 2016. So what is your take of the outlook of the private residential market in 2015 and 2016? And do you think the government will do something to prevent this oversupply?
Now, supply is something that you cannot change already. It's the same, goes with undersupply, over and undersupply. The last few years, the market went up so much, there was also some miscomputation of the demand and supply. There was a lot of demand, little supply. So now they are trying to do the balancing act. Seriously, nobody will know for sure what will happen. But one thing, if you want to look out for any so-called liberalization or relaxing of the cooling measures, two factors. One, we have to see what Hong Kong do with their ABSD. Because Hong Kong also have ABSD, 15%. Singapore has 15%. So if Singapore go and reduce first, and Hong Kong don't reduce, you know where some of the hot money will go into. Because there's a arbitrage, there's a discrepancy. Then the other factor is we have to wait until 2016, see what happens. You all know what I mean. Because if they have a majority win, then maybe they think things have been so-called normalized. So we can welcome foreigners back so that there's more demand for our flat or for our properties for rental. Because now with supply and then with dwindling demands, employment pass not being given out, PR applications are denied, so you have lesser and lesser demand from all these foreigners, people coming to work here. So, but bottom line, I think the governments have a lot of policy ammunitions that they can use to calibrate, okay, to ensure that the market has a soft landing, not a hard landing.
Okay, so it sounds like if you want to have a better market, it's best for them to have a resounding wing. Okay, next question is for Chi Ming. How is the GST 6% applied to the rental of properties in Malaysia? Because just now you elaborated on selling, but is it applicable for rental of commercial, industrial, and also residential properties?
For residential, whether it is sale or lease or rental, it is tax exempt. Yeah. But for commercial, industrial properties, anything to do with it, you have to pay GST, and it is an introductory rate of 6%. This means that in future years, you can see that the rate could be increased. Yeah. And the other thing is, I just want to clear this consumption, because even amongst us in the fraternity, there's still not very certain whether the GST will apply to properties where you buy and sign the SMP before 1st April, or is it for properties where the sale is completed before 1st April. Now, from what I understand is that if you buy a property now and the completion is after 1st April, you will still have to pay GST, but it's on the portion that will be paid after 1st April. Yeah. So if you have paid that portion before 1st April, you will escape GST. So don't be caught by those sales talk saying that, oh, buy before GST, save GST. It may not be true. It actually depends on where, at which point in time the sale is completed.
Okay, next for Christina. Just now you mentioned about 2 en bloc projects, Thomson View and Harbour View Gardens, that was not successful despite there's a developer buying because of bad faith. Would you like to elaborate on what does that mean?
Okay, in a collective sale, well, basically 2 main things can scuttle a collective sale. The first thing is if any one of the owners actually suffer financial loss. So what we mean by financial loss is if the collective sale proceeds is insufficient to pay off whatever he has paid for the property, including his interest, including his legal fees, and including his stamp duty. The other main key item that may scuttle the collective sale is bad faith. Now, if I'm not wrong, in both of the collective sales of Harbourview Gardens as well as Thomson View, there was some prepayment, or rather a carrot which was given to some of the dissenting owners to actually come forward to sign off on the collective sale to get the 80%. So this is definitely bad faith, okay, because you're not allowed to do that. So in a collective sale, I have always emphasized that there has to be full transparency, full disclosure, and a sense of ethics and morality has to surround a collective sale deal. If these ingredients are not present, and if a dissenting owner does find out that something like that has indeed happened, they can bring the case all the way up to the High Court, and the court will just disallow the sale. So I think if you Google Harbourview Gardens or Thomson View, you will find the judgment on why it was disallowed, and it was disallowed basically because of a payment made to some dissenting owners to entice them to come forward to sign off.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for Patrick. If the person goes missing, or he goes into a coma but not dead yet, so in this scenario, will LPA or will come into play?
Yeah, if you go into coma or dementia, then if you have a valid LPA, then it will come into play. But if you go missing, your LPA wouldn't come into play, because you go missing, you are not on Zaoma, you see. You could go missing, go fishing, or go something like this. You are still okay. So your LPA would not be able to be enforced. So for LPA to come into play, you basically need to lose mental faculty, and you will not be able to look after yourself. So some banks, if you go to the bank, the LPA, they may actually want you to produce a medical report. So you need to go to the hospital of your parents and say, okay, give me the medical report to show that my mom basically is incapacitated.
And also 2 related questions for you. Does the Malaysian jurisdiction recognize Singapore written will written by a Singapore lawyer, or is it safe to have a will written by a Malaysian lawyer? I think this person probably have Malaysian assets lah.
Okay, for will made in Singapore will, right, generally cover asset in Singapore, but we have also done will which cover asset in Commonwealth countries, like for instance Australia, Hong Kong, Malaysia, London, meaning that our will has been used to include or to get hold of asset like cash, monies in London, in Australia. Similarly, we have done a lot of wills for foreigners. They have asset in Singapore, like, we have done will for Australian, even Russian. They have bank account here. So they come here, they park their money here, they buy property here, and they also make a will here. So, but however, a word of caution is that if you have real estate, that means properties, right? Real estate in Malaysia or in Australia, all this, it is best that actually you get legal advice over there, because for immovable properties, real estate, right, their law may be different from ours. So as a matter of prudence, you may want to get advice over there. All right, but of course, if you have real estate or money in Non-Commonwealth country like Timbuktu, China or Brazil, right? Then that one totally no. All right.
Okay. Next question for Alfred. What justification does US have to print money? So do they need to back up the printing of US dollar with US assets? I think this also applies to other jurisdictions like Japan, EU. When they print money, do they need to back it up with assets?
Okay, I mean, of course, print money is just our layman term of talking about it. They don't literally order the factory and then print more money. I mean, that one, we can always easily do it. So they use this process called issuing government bonds. This is just one of them, right? Or what they do is that they buy back the bonds that the banks are holding on. Okay, in essence, when they do such things, they increase their money supply. Okay, but of course, I don't think you are interested in the economic fundamental. Basically, whatever they say they can print means they can print. Japan is the same, Europe is the same. So they do not have to use asset to back it up. Which is why when a country print money, there's this tendency or there's this danger that the currency will devalue. But that's the brilliant part of the US. They can print so much money that the US dollars can still go up. So, I mean, they are very bright people, very smart mind. And of course, they are still the largest economy in the world. They are also the most supreme military power in the world. So these are some of the things that a lot of countries don't have. And only they can do certain things. But of course, I think based on track records, most of the time, they do play on these global leaders to factor in the global interests. But just to add on to the GST about Malaysia. In fact, GST, there's also a lot of confusion in Singapore markets. Because we come across buyers of industrial and commercial properties that do not do proper planning. A simple things like setting up a SPV, special purpose vehicle, to own the properties. Then you can actually do tax planning, you can actually offset your GST. But this is where I think the Malaysians are still not very clear about these situations. But if you are buying properties in Malaysia, industrial, commercial, I would strongly recommend you to set up a Sindri Berhad, a private limited in Malaysia, so that you can be better positions. In Singapore, if let's say you buy a commercial properties, now under an individual name, and then if, because along the way you trade a lot of other properties, and then you become a property trader as defined by IRAS. When you sell your commercial property for more than $1 million, you are expected to collect GST. So that will have serious implications. So this is something that, of course, the investors for the Malaysian industrial commercial property market must look out for. But based on my research on the impact of GST, it seems like GST may help property price. If you use Singapore experience in 1993, 2003, 2004, and 2007, there seems to strong factors to show that GST actually prop up the property price. But in common sense, you look at it, yes, although residential property is a tax-exempt supply kind of item, but the cost of production all goes up. From the raw material, from the sands, the tiles, everything, workers. So eventually, someone have to pay for this. So although under the GST law, the buyers don't have to pay, but the developer will, at certain point of time, where they find that, hey, no point for me to absorb, I better put it on and pass it on to the buyers. So this is one, which is why I think Malaysia property, there is good consideration to look into it because of the change in policies. Second is that if the Malaysian government introduced GST successfully, what it will do is it will help them in their deficit, which means to say it will help in their currency. So for investors like Singaporeans, then this is something we are very concerned with. The property price in Malaysia, it goes up, but if the currency goes down, then come back to square one. But now, if let's say the GST impacts do affect the property to increase, and then help them to better manage the deficit, therefore make their currency stronger, then there's 2+ factors for Singapore investors. But we are not a real estate expert, so please do your due diligence to see which project is the right one.
Okay. Next question for Patrick. I think it's a definition. In the table that you showed, you have parents, aunties, and uncles. So the question is, for example, parents, does it include parents-in-law? And also for aunties and uncle, is it referring to father's side aunties or mother's side auntie, uncle? And does it include the spouse of the aunties and the uncles or their children?
Okay, fair enough. Basically, we are dealing with your estate. That means when you die, we are only talking about your side of the family. If you're you don't have to worry about, you know, your wife's side, you know, their auntie, uncle, or the in-law side. So when we mention parents, your parents, not her parents. So just now the table, right, under the Intestate Succession Act only relates to you because only you die, your wife didn't die. So if your wife also die, right, or your husband also die, then she has her own thing to take care of, her own parents to take care of. So the only issue that may potentially happen that cross these two people, right, when you have joint asset. Like just now I say, like joint tenancy, right? If one of the joint tenancy fella pass away, then the surviving joint owner becomes the sole owner. Now your question may be, if both die together, how? Both crash in the ocean, you know, cannot find the body, and then who die first, right? So the law presumes the older one by date of birth to have died first. So basically, if the husband is the older one by date of birth, it is presumed that he has died first. So then the joint tenancy property will flow in spirit, right, to the wife. And then, of course, the wife also perished already, right? But then the property is considered the wife's property. So then we look at the wife. Got will, follow will. No will, follow law. So as come to the law part, only her parents, not the husband's parents, will get it. And the sibling. All follow that side of the story. And just one point, coming back to Alfred, just now we were talking about mortgage and all this, right? It reminds me that if you have a private property and all this, right, you should consider having a mortgage insurance, I would say. And that is so essential. Because I'm speaking from my personal experience, like when my best friend passed away, right, he has a Balestier condominium. So he didn't have a will at 39 years old. And his parents asked me, you know, that so how is his condo going to be divided? I said, under the law, uncle 50, auntie 50. Then they said, including this condo? I said, yes, including this condo in Balestier. So then the next thing, they show me a letter from the bank saying, please accept my condolences, you know, who is going to settle the outstanding mortgage, you know, no signature required. I say fairly standard. So I asked them, auntie, so there's a 600,000 mortgage loan, you know. So before we talk about uncle 50, auntie 50, right, somebody has to settle this 600,000. But I told them, I think based on my assessment of the market, I think the valuation is about $1 million. So if you sell it, you get 400,000. So uncle 200, auntie 200 lah. Then the auntie said, no, I'm not going to sell it. I said, huh? You're not going to sell it? Then what are we going to do with it? I'm going to keep it. I said, you're going to keep it? I said, yeah, because sentimental value. My son died here. I want to keep it and rent it out. I said, huh? Really? Okay. But somebody has to settle this 600,000, you see. Then say, but Patrick, we have no money. Huh? You have no money, but you want to keep? I say, that is a difficult question, you know. I say, I can write to the bank to delay a while, but I think they will repossess, you know, if you don't. So they have a hard time, but they managed to raise 600,000 and pay off the bank and keep the property. But my point is, if my friend had the foresight, you know, he would have done a will and actually consider getting a mortgage insurance to pay off the mortgage so that whatever he leaves behind will be loan-free for the parents. So we talk about giving, condo, we give here, give there. Ultimately, if you got debts, your debt have to pay. You know. Some people think they die, no more debts. You know. That's not true. You know. You may die, but the debt's still there. You know. So you have to think of a way to settle this debt. So mortgage insurance is one thing that you should consider, you know, to have. All right?
Yeah. For Christina, is it possible to make a loss when doing en bloc sale because of SSD? And for people who are caught in this situation, is there any solution for them?
Yes, definitely. There's a possibility of you incurring a loss if you're caught within the certain time frame that of things like SSD and stuff like that. But if you are, then I would suggest don't sign the collective sale agreement if you're worried about the loss. But if you find that logically, if I were to sell the property together in a collective sale, I would actually realize a much better margin than if I were to sell it individually. Then you know you should make the that kind of research, you have to do it yourself. So yes, you can actually incur a loss, but for most people, the gain far outweighs the loss that they will likely incur. Yeah.
Okay. Next question for Patrick. If I do not wish my loved one to sell the properties I own, what can I do? I only want them to take the rental income, but I don't want them to sell.
Okay, then you may want to consider building a trust in your will. Like I said, a will is it's called a testamentary trust. So it's very common to find in a will you have a trust structure built inside, whether it is for real estate or for your money. To give you an example, in your will you can say that, okay, I give my condo to my trustee to hold it in trust for my wife. Okay, however, my trustee shall not sell the property. Instead, he can rent it out and pay her the rental or let her stay for the rest of her life. So we can actually structure something like this in your will. Similarly for cash, you know, instead of giving lump sum to your young children, I mean, they might squander it away. You can actually ask your trustee to hold the money and then give it to the children for their educational and medical and reasonable living expenses. Then when they turn 35, then the balance lump sum, give it to them. So within the will, you can actually structure something like this. So needless to say, because the job is fairly onerous, you have to appoint your trustee, preferably a professional trustee, rather than your wife. You know, because how long can your wife may not live that long, you see, to fulfill that kind of trust obligations. So you may want to appoint a licensed trust company to do that. All right.
Yeah, this question is for Chi Ming. For yesterday presentation by Siva and also by Chi Ming, it's indicated that for the Malaysian market, there's a drop in transaction volume, as you presented, and an increase in the transaction value. So I think this person wants to understand a little bit more how it happens.
Okay. Now, in terms of volume, it is measured by the number of properties transacted. Value of transactions is the total of all the transaction prices of all these properties. So if let's say the price of each transaction goes up, the value of all these transactions actually go up. So sometimes it could be a situation where the number of transactions may have come down, but because there is a price increase of each property transacted, sometimes may not be due to the increase in price of the properties, but it could be due to that particular year, more of the higher value properties being transacted. So that's why the value of those transactions would have gone up. Yeah, there's a difference. Not necessarily price goes up, but it is that basket of transactions concluded that year, more of the high-end properties. So overall value of the transactions have gone up. But what it means is that if the volume goes down, the value of the transaction goes up. That means the average price, the average value of each transaction has gone up. Yeah. So normally you can take it that the price of properties have actually gone up for that particular year.
I think I'll go to the last question for Alfred. So you mentioned that the interest rate has a correlation with property price. So how does one determine that the property price level is low, or how does one determine the interest rate level is low? And based on your presentation just now, you mentioned that the interest rate increase is not likely to be that high for next year. Then should the borrowers then go for the variable rate instead of the fixed rate?
Well, now, I think the first statement about interest rate is correlated to property price. What I'm saying is that interest rate is just one of the components. Doesn't mean to say high interest rate property price will come down. But one thing quite sure is that a low interest rate environment will definitely make the property price move up. Okay, so I think that is where you, as investors, you need to balance it out. Then as a homeowners, you need to do your proper financial plan. Now, interest rate, like what I say, is really anybody guess now. The interest rate have a lot to catch up. If you look at the chart just now, US Federal Reserve on the average is about 4%. Now they are near zero. So you're talking about almost a 4% to catch up. So whether it will catch up within a year or whether we will catch up within 4 years, that one, it depends on the global macro situations. But based on the MAS prescription of 3.5% for your credit assessment, I think that's a fair interest rate to actually apply. Okay, so in summary, interest rate, how much it will go up, nobody can tell. But like what I mentioned, based on the US Federal Reserve, all the governors, the general consensus, it seems that by June 2015, they would raise the rate by about 0.5%. All these are very transparent, open informations. But after which, they have 4% to catch up. So they will have to monitor what happened in Europe, Japan, China, before they decide the rest. But I mean, on that note, I think, yes, buying property in Singapore is no longer that straightforward. Ever since they have introduced all the cooling measures, I mean, many people have died. I mean, in a sense, because cooling measures, there's a lot of implication. People die, they don't know what happened really. But example, you got ABSD, you got SSD, you got TDSR. So I think like what Patrick have mentioned earlier on, it's really no longer that straightforward, which is why you really need to do proper plannings. And yeah, so if you are not sure, go to our Facebook and like our Facebook. Okay, because I publish regular articles.
Thank you. There are still many questions, but I suggest you can put out in ST Property to ask our Just Ask, and then we will direct to the speakers to answer. I'll hand back over to the MC